Hello and welcome to another solo episode of Astrobloom podcast. So for this episode, I'd like to follow on the themes of the last two episodes talking about eclipse season and the energy of Pluto. But I'd really like to focus on some herbs that have been calling to me for this energy that we're experiencing. So for those of you that maybe didn't listen to the last two episodes, I would recommend going back. But to give you a really brief Coles Notes, we are entering we are in our eclipse season as of April 20th. And this eclipse season is really interesting because we just had a hybrid eclipse, which means that the nodes of the moon, which are always involved in eclipses, they're very fated spiritual points in astrology that teach us, how we are evolving as a collective and personally in this life. Were in the signs of Taurus and still are in the signs of Taurus and Scorpio. And they have been in these signs since the end of 2021. So what this really means is that we've all been collectively shown, how to really step into this North Node energy in the sign of Taurus. Taurus is connected to our heart space. It's all about our value systems, how we really connect to our body, how we take care of our body, how we take care of the earth, how we can live in alignment with those heart's desires and with our inherent value system. So we've all been waking up to, what do we truly value in life? We've been letting go of some of the more shadow aspects of the Scorpio energy, which is, situations that make us feel disempowered, sort of things that we might be giving our energy to that are not serving the things that we are actually wanting to call in, that are in alignment with our heart space. But what makes this a hybrid eclipse is because the sun and moon were actually in Aries, aligning with the North Node in Taurus. And because we have the nodes shifting signs into Aries and Libra in July of this year, this is almost like a little preview of what is the energy that's going to come when the nodes shift into Aries and Libra in July for the next year and a half. So until 2025. And in a sense, even though solar or new moon eclipses have this like beginning energy, there is that because we're getting this preview, but there's also this energy of like endings, clearing anything stagnant that is left in our body that we've been holding on to, because Taurus and Scorpio energy, they are fixed signs. They tend to hold on to things that we've been holding on to that are not serving where we are actually going, the things that we are building in our lives that are going to be long-standing, long-lasting, sustainable, all of those qualities of Taurus energy, of that North Node in Taurus. So in saying that, Pluto, god of the underworld, has also been squaring these nodes for the last few weeks, and this is actually energy we're going to be feeling for most of 2023. And so whenever we have a tough aspect to Pluto, there is this death and rebirth process that's happening. There is a pressure to really face some of the things in our subconscious, to do the shadow work, to go into the underworld, to emerge and bring these things to light so that we can clear space and create new life from that, and create, release really like old patterns and things like that. So some of the plants that have really been calling to me this season, I'll start with the first one. And really want to just kind of indicate I am not a medical professional. So if you will be using any of these plants, please do, connect with a medical professional or herbalist, someone that you can trust, especially if you are pregnant or breastfeeding or have any allergies and things like that. Just wanted to say that. So a lot of these herbs, they are generally regarded as safe. They can be used as a tea, oil, tincture, things like that. I'll kind of go through them with you, but the first one I really wanted to cover is violets. So violets are, there's different types of violets. The ones I'm talking about are the Viola odorata, which are those common wild violets that you see coming up this time of year if you are in the Northern Hemisphere. Violets are really connected to the energy of Venus and specifically Taurus. And the reason I really love them for this eclipse season is because they are a lymphatic stimulant. And so they actually really help clear any stagnation in the body, anything we might have accumulated, over the winter, as we tend to be a bit more sedentary in the winter. They are also energetically cooling, which is really nice coming out of a super fiery, super triggering Aries season. So as you all probably know, Aries season, we had a conjunction between Chiron and Jupiter in Aries. And we're still moving away from that energy. But what this really means is that a lot of us have had a lot of our inherent sort of wounding and patterns come up during the last month or so. And so there's been a lot of triggers that we've had to face with respect to like how we really show up as ourselves in the world, how we step into our independence, how we stay authentic to ourselves, how we self-assert in relationships, how we maybe how we do or don't lose ourselves within relationships. And so there's been a lot of maybe agitation, right, with this energy. So the cooling energy of violets is really nice to kind of help calm and soothe this while still moving energy through the body. And the reason I really like the idea of using these herbs that stimulate the flow of energy and the flow of lymph in the body right now is, first of all, on the physical level, detoxing, like I said, anything we might have acquired over the winter. But energetically, we are at this time right now where we are really being called to like release, purge, and surrender to this eclipse energy. So not only do violets cool this fire that we've been feeling, they also are really symbolic of giving courage and strength to really heal these wounds and to face these realignments of eclipse season with this courage and this bravery. Because eclipse seasons are really unpredictable most of the time, things happen that we don't fully understand, but what we need to know is that it's happening for our highest good. So violets have traditionally been used you can apply the leaves externally, you can use the flowers, don't use the roots. They're not edible, but basically they've been used externally or internally in the case of heartburn, eye inflammation, even things like epilepsy, sore throats, and really purging like any inflammation and stimulating bile as well. So the other thing, because they have this kind of purging action, they're really great to soothe the throat chakra and purge any phlegm and things like that in the throat. So they're able to really soothe our throat chakra so that we can express ourselves authentically. Again, really in alignment with some of this wounding that may have been triggered over the last month. Violets also have a reputation for really cooling and soothing the emotions. So one of the shadow expressions of Aries energy is anger. And because violets are really able to soothe the emotions and sort of expel this energy, they're actually really great to be able to soothe the emotions and deal maybe with some of this anger and fire stored within the body. If we think of the common name of violet, so pansies are also a type of violet. Pansy is called heart's ease, and I'm talking about the viola tricolor in this sense. It's also called the wild pansy, and it comes from the French word of pensée. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, meaning thought. So many of us, like I said, have been really stuck in maybe some old thought patterns. These things have been coming up. They've been being unearthed, and we've maybe really fallen into some of these like excessive and unwanted cyclical thought patterns that are not serving us. So really, Violet's gift here is to be able to soothe the emotions and to help us sort of let go and release some of these things that we don't need anymore. They've also traditionally been used to address the heart and nervous system on an energetic level. So really by lifting and soothing hearts and spirits of those suffering from grief, heartache, and like I mentioned, really quenching that fire of anger and irritation. And grief, as I, mentioned with Pluto, is very much part of the story with this eclipse season because Pluto is squaring the nodes. And really with a large part of this year, whenever Pluto is involved, there is a need to grieve what once was. There's a need to go through a death process and to make room for new life. So violets are really useful in this. The astrological correspondence of violets does come from Greek mythology. So there was a nymph called Io, I believe is her name, who had an affair with Zeus or Jupiter. And to avoid the wrath of his wife, Hera, or the asteroid Juno in astrology, Zeus actually turned the nymph into a cow. And if you know about astrology, you know that obviously Taurus is symbolized by the cow. And he actually grew violets for her to eat to sustain her. So this is really where the symbolism of violets comes in association with Taurus, and this is how we kind of find correspondences, is through Greek mythology. Of course, there's this backstory of love, right? And like really a need, finding a way to sustain this love that he did have with this nymph. And Taurus is all about sustenance, right? So things that really keep us fulfilled on some level, like physically. So yeah, that's just an interesting little backstory that I found about violets in Greek mythology. And in ancient Greece, the violets were actually used to promote sleep, again, really deal with any lingering anger and irritation, and provide comfort and strength for the heart. So as you can tell from this story too, there really was anger involved because Hera was quite a devoted wife to Zeus, actually. And she must have had to deal with a lot of suppressed anger in all of his, romantic quests with all of the nymphs and mortals and other goddesses. So that's sort of where that energy comes from. So on a physical level, as I mentioned, violets really work to work with the lymphatic system. And so they're really great for not only like topically for the skin to help reduce any swelling, any puffiness. They can be used to dissolve cysts and lumps and bumps, things like that. I've actually been having this cyst return in my wrist since I've been teaching yoga and maybe just not as mindful of my weight placement when I'm instructing and moving through the poses, but it's also been calling to me for that to just help ease some of the swelling there. It's really a soothing plant that can help dissolve frustration, resentment, and really relieve a simmering feeling of feeling stuck. So that is the shadow expression of Taurus energy, right? Is like being stagnant, staying the same, being afraid of change, being stubborn, and violets really help break that up. Violets can also be made into a syrup that are really great for anxiety, as they're a gentle nervine. And one of the things that I've been making this eclipse season is actually violet infused oil. As I mentioned, I'm using it topically to deal with some swelling in my wrist from teaching yoga. So I actually made that with one of the next herbs I wanted to talk about, which is mugwort. And just wanted to say, violets can be quite easily foraged, but just whenever you are foraging anything, make sure you're only taking a third of whatever you find and leaving some for the bees, as they also really like violets. And they can easily be dried at a really like in a dehydrator or at a really, really low temperature in your oven. Ovens can be a little bit tricky just because they tend to not go low enough. Usually herbs are dried at about 41 degrees Celsius. You can always leave them out in the sun on a nice, warm, dry day to dehydrate them. And you can grind them into a powder, use them as a mask, or make infused oil, like I mentioned, or just drink them as a tea. So the next herb I wanted to touch on is mugwort. So mugwort is a plant that is part of the Artemisia family, so the same family as wormwood, which many of you might know is what absinthe is made from. It is a moon and Neptune ruled plant that I really associate with Taurus energy. It and Cancer energy at the same time. But basically mugwort is a really, really mystical herb. It's a beautiful kind of silvery leaf. It has long seedlings, or sort of really tall stems with a lot of seedlings on it. It grows pretty abundantly in North America. So in around the world, really. So it's been used in a lot of different folklores, a lot of different traditions, and it has a really rich magical folklore in both Europe and Asia, with it being used as a protection from evil sort of energy, disease, and bad luck. So woven crowns of mugwort were actually worn on different like midsummer celebrations to protect against, you know, potential evil, malignant type spirits from sort of attacking people. So it's silvery leaf. It has a silvery leaf underside and is associated with the moon, because the moon is this very silvery feminine energy. And so it's really associated with that yin or feminine energy. As its Latin name would sort of indicate, Artemisia comes from the association to Artemis, the Greek goddess of woodland, or the Greek goddess who is considered to be a protector of woodlands, animals, and also the goddess of fertility and childbirth. So this association in and of itself already really draws that connection between mugwort and women, and also this like nurturing energy that the moon and Taurus both embody. The moon is actually exalted in Taurus, which means that outside of its home placement of Cancer, it does really well there. It's this like really fertile the mother archetype, in the sense that it's very nurturing physically. So mugwort is very much has been considered to be a women's herb. It has it has an affinity for the female reproductive system, but it's also been used more energetically to awaken intuition and evoke lucid dreaming, either taking it as a tea before bedtime, or even making little dream pillows with it and stuffing it you know, under your pillow. It's also great as an incense to aid in meditation and other cleansing rituals. And a lot of people believe that its highest magical peak is when it's just beginning to flower. It's considered a women's herb because it's been used to help women through all stages of their lives. Because it has menstrual cycle regulating properties, it eases its symptoms, but it's also considered an emmenagogue, which brings on uterine contractions. So it actually helps facilitate childbirth, and it also makes menopause more bearable. So just a note there that pregnant women should not be using this plant internally. One of the other really interesting ways mugwort has been used that I've had a lot of personal experience with, because I know if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you probably know that I love traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture. And mugwort is actually the herb that's used in moxa or moxibustion. So if you've ever gone to have acupuncture done and they have put little like compact herb capsules onto the needles and then burn them, that's actually mugwort, or moxa. So it really, what this is used for is to create a gentle warmth to improve circulation and increase blood and lymph flow to other areas of the body. And this in turn reduces pain and inflammation. And really what it's doing at the end of the day is enhancing the flow of energy through the body, because that's what acupuncture is at the end of the day, is essentially activating different points within the energy channels or meridians of the body to stimulate the flow of prana or chi. And this really chi or prana or energy stimulating effect of or property of mugwort is why I love mugwort for Taurus energy. Like I mentioned, Taurus shadow aspects can really be quite stagnant. As an earth sign, they can also tend to hold on to a lot of this stagnation and just be really, that's why one of the shadow aspects of Taurus is like being really stubborn, right? Because it's like this inability to move, being really stuck. And so as we really finish up these eclipses in Taurus and Scorpio, we're being asked to release any last aspects of this stagnation, of this resistance to change, right? So mugwort is a really great ally along with violets, because they both help move energy, move stagnation through the body and, metaphorically in our lives. Mugwort also being this like really magical, mystical plant, also associated with the moon, really connects us with our third eye. It connects us to our intuition, and it allows us to really move through this stagnation and through the underworld that Pluto is guiding us through, or taking us to, whether we want to be or not. We're likely being, forced to kind of face some of those hidden aspects of self. So mugwort can really help us move through this underworld with clarity and psychic insight, connected to our intuition, because of that ability to really ground us into our psychic gifts. It, as I mentioned, really grows all around the world. So these various uses I've talked about with mugwort have been noted in all kinds of European, Asian, and even South American traditions. For example, the Aztecs considered mugwort a really sacred plant and used it for incense. In many sort of Wiccan traditions and things like that, it has been long used to induce lucid dreaming, astral projection, and to enhance psychic powers. Native Americans also burn mugwort to purify the spiritual and physical environment around them. And yeah, a lot of uses for warding off any negative kind of energy. It is also a stimulant for the digestive system. Again, with that correspondence to the moon is, as the moon rules over Cancer, both of these energies are really connected to the stomach. So it makes sense that mugwort has that affinity for the stomach as well as a bile stimulant. And yeah, you can burn it, you can drink it. Just make sure that you're not drinking if you're pregnant. And again, consult any healthcare practitioner if you're going to be using herbs in an extensive way. That's what I meant to say. And yeah, it just really helps move anything that you're having a hard time letting go of. So the final plant I wanted to talk about is Motherwort. So Motherwort is a plant that's actually ruled by Venus, the moon, and really associated with Leo energy. And the reason this has really come up for me is because this plant, because of its association with the womb and the heart, it really helps us link our heart's desires and then link into that energy of like creation, being able to birth this energy into the physical world. And what that requires really is for the energy from the heart chakra, to be open to move into the sacral, and then into the solar and then the sacral. So this is that channel through which, because Venus is very much the bridge between the lower three chakras that are associated with the physical realm and the higher three chakras that are associated with the astral realm, being really in touch with this Venusian energy, with this energy of the heart, being aligned in the heart space, and then being able to take the inspired action in alignment with that through the solar plexus, through that divine masculine Mars energy, is how we really manifest things into the physical. And, you know, a lot of that creativity really arises from the sacral chakra below the solar plexus. So Motherwort is this herb that is really able to help us find flow and surrender to that creative power. A lot of its sort of physical properties have been used throughout history for the women's reproductive system. Its English name, Motherwort, quite literally means mother's herb. And the other one that it has been used for is the heart. So it really shows us this connection between the womb and the heart, and how there's a bridge that needs to happen there for the creative potential of both the moon and Venus to really come into the physical, right? The moon and Venus are both the top sort of archetypes of divine feminine energy. There's lots of different divine feminine asteroids as well that are contained within that, but the moon and Venus are the original archetypes of the mother and the maiden that, you know, women have typically fallen into. Of course, there's many more roles that exist now, and I'm not going to get into that because that's a whole other podcast episode. But basically, this is all just to say, you know, this herb really symbolizes this incredible creativity that is available to us when we really surrender into our divine feminine. But for that to happen, we need to pass through the divine masculine. Like, we need to be in balance in that divine masculine, that solar plexus, because that is the chakra that connects the sacral, the womb, and the heart, which is Venus. So Motherwort has a special affinity, like I mentioned, for women throughout their lives. It's an effective tonic for menstrual and menopausal symptoms due to a number of properties it has. So it's antispasmodic, so it helps relieve muscle contractions. It is a nervine. It helps balance hormones. And it's an emmenagogue, which means that it moves blood and energy. So again, similar to Mugwort. It's really able to calm anxiety that comes with childbirth, eases cramping after birth. And yeah, like I mentioned, during menopause, it helps moderate hormone levels and eases hot flashes. So really, it's an herb that helps women through all stages of their lives. And its heart balancing property really comes from, this is really an association that comes from its Latin word, or its Latin name, called Leonoris cardiaca. And this actually means lion-hearted. So this, if we know about medical astrology, we know that Leo actually rules the physical heart in the body. So it's this plant, Motherwort, is actually indicated for strengthening the heart, and particularly for heart palpitations or irregular heartbeat, because again of its muscle relaxing properties. It's able to relax the cardiac muscle and ease tension and anxiety that might come with some of these disorders. Like I said, this is an herb that quite literally helps us bridge what we desire in our hearts and how we can actually bring it into our reality. It can be used as a tea or a tincture, but beware, Motherwort is incredibly, incredibly bitter. And as it develops seeds, they actually become quite prickly to handle. The other interesting thing that happens with Motherwort is its stems turn red throughout the growing season. And so this actually really shows us its affinity, or how it's connected to the menstrual cycle. It is really great to use in, rituals or spells where we're really trying to facilitate our creative process, surrender into that feminine energy, and take action in alignment to what our intuition is calling us to do. So perfect for this eclipse season, because this eclipse season is really about balancing that feminine and masculine in a way, because we have the activation of Venus and Mars ruled signs. So both the last two nodes, Taurus and Scorpio, Taurus is ruled by Venus, Scorpio is ruled by Mars and Pluto. And then we're moving into the next set of nodes, which are Aries and Libra. Again, Aries ruled by Mars, Libra ruled by Venus. So we've had this big theme around, really aligning ourselves to our heart space, aligning ourselves to our desires, to our value system, and then really being able to use Venus as that bridge to take that aligned action to really step into our divine masculine energy, that Martian energy of like willpower, having the willpower and the courage and the drive to act on the things that our intuition, our yin side is speaking to us. So these are just some of the herbs that have been coming up for me. The other one I would say that I would highly recommend working with is rose. So there's a great episode that Alana from Rose Rituals Yoga and I did, one of the first few interview episodes on the podcast around the rose, and what it's been used for and all of the great things that it does. But just to kind of recap here, it's really a wonderful herb for the heart chakra, again, for that Venus energy. So anytime there's a lot of activation of Tauran or Libran themes, or a lot of Venus energy in the sky, I highly recommend working with rose to really help balance the heart chakra. So one of the ways that I really like working with herbs is making infused oils. So what I've done for this season is I've sort of curated this list of herbs to my unique chart. So because violets tend to be pretty cooling, and so do roses, I didn't actually want too much of a cooling effect on me because I actually don't have a lot of fire in my chart. So what I did is I added a little bit of cinnamon for a little bit of fire in there. I put violets and mugwort, and I actually added dandelion root in mine just because I've been feeling really called to it personally, as I'm going through this liver detoxing protocol with my naturopath, really trying to break up some liver stagnation, like liver chi stagnation that I've been dealing with. So I've made an infused oil with that, and I'm going to be using it just topically on my body in my ritual practice, before meditation, things like that. So yeah, that's one of the ways you can easily work with these herbs, is make a tincture, or sorry, make an infused oil. But like I mentioned, you can always just brew a nice easy cup of tea too. Hope you enjoyed this, and if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. My contact info is in the show notes as always, and I'm always happy to chat about plants and planets. Thank you for tuning in.